What you see here is the brand new Ducati Streetfighter V2. Now, unlike other new launches, this motorcycle seems to have gone backwards because it features a smaller engine and it also produces 30 horsepower less than the older version. So is it actually an upgrade? Well, we have come all the way to Spain to find that out, and we are going to be riding this motorcycle for a whole day on some lovely roads in Almeria. So let's find out what's the reasoning behind Ducati downsizing this motorcycle and if it still makes sense. So let's quickly start with the design of the new Streetfighter V2. Of course, on the surface, it looks more or less the same as the older version, but there have been some refinements. Now, of course, the biggest change is the engine. This is an all-new engine. It is an 890cc twin-cylinder engine. So the old engine, which was the Super Quattro, that was 955cc. So Ducati has gone for a smaller engine, and they've done that because they wanted the gap between the V4 and the V2 to be bigger, because the previous version, it was too close to the Streetfighter V4. So what Ducati says is that customers who were going to their dealerships, they were really confused between the V2 and the V4. And so sometimes there was that brand cannibalization between the Streetfighter V2 and the V4. But now the gap is bigger. And of course, this produces slightly less horsepower. So this is rated at 118 bhp, whereas the old version was 148 bhp. Now, that's the biggest change. But other than that, this motorcycle is much lighter than the previous version. This has lost close to 18 kilograms compared to the old one. So this is the V2S, and it weighs around 173 kilograms. So that is a big chunk of weight that this motorcycle has lost. And 9 kilograms of that comes just from the engine itself. So again, big changes. And the whole theme of this motorcycle is lightness. Now, of course, it is a lighter motorcycle, but at the same time, it has grown longer because it gets the same dual-sided swing arm like the Panigale V4 and the Streetfighter V4. So there's no single-sided swing arm anymore. So of course, the internet is raging over that, but this is there for a reason, because it reduces the lateral stiffness on this motorcycle. So of course, in terms of handling, there are going to be benefits of that. And now the wheelbase is much longer. It is at 1493 millimeters, and it's close to the Streetfighter V4 now, because the Streetfighter is 1496 millimeters. But in terms of the design, it looks quite familiar, apart from the front end, which is a little softer now compared to the previous version. And compared to the Streetfighter V4, the big change here is that it doesn't get those biplane wings. The new Streetfighter V4 gets that. And the exhaust, well, it gets a twin underseat exhaust as compared to the Streetfighter V4, which gets an underbody exhaust. So that's the big change between this and the Streetfighter V4. Now, overall, like I said, in terms of dimensions, it feels like a big bike. It feels like a liter class bike still. But the main theme here is that it is much lighter. And I've already ridden this motorcycle for a whole day, and I think I'm really impressed with the way this motorcycle rides, because this engine, it feels as powerful. Of course, it doesn't have that sort of pull as the older engine, but in terms of its torque delivery, Ducati says that, you know, it comes right on from 3000 RPM. 70% of that torque comes right from 3000 RPM, and it stays put all the way up to 10,000 RPM. So you definitely feel that grunt. The best part is the smoothness and how linear the power feels. Of course, it is still strong, but it feels very measured. It just builds in a very linear fashion. So I think on the road, it makes riding this motorcycle easier. To ride it fast, you can really open the gas as soon as you want to, and it's not going to come in like a quick burst. So it is more measured, and I think that's the party piece of this engine now, because it doesn't feel like a Ducati engine, to be very frank. It is very refined. The vibrations are minimal on this motorcycle. So I think that's what new customers are going to like about this motorcycle. Similarly, in terms of the suspension hardware, this is the V2S, so it gets Öhlins suspension, both at the front and back, fully adjustable. And of course, it's not electronic suspension, semi-electronic like you get with the V4. It is your manual adjustments, and it really is really fine-tuned for this motorcycle. It works really well. So today we are riding this motorcycle on some lovely roads in Almeria, a lot of twisties, a lot of long flowing corners, and I think this motorcycle, the agility and the lightness, like those are the two key factors. That's what impressed me the most about the V2S. So the way it changes direction, the stability, it feels really, really amazing. And I think the best part about this motorcycle is the stability and the confidence that it gives to the rider. So for me, I think these are the main USPs of the Streetfighter V2S. It's light, and at the same time, the power delivery is very linear, very measured, and you can ride it fast every time. So for new riders who are jumping from, let's say, a small motorcycle to a big motorcycle, they'll not feel intimidated by the Streetfighter V2. Earlier, we have seen with Ducati twin engines, they were quite aggressive, the power delivery was quite fierce, but in this motorcycle, you still get the same sort of performance, but at the same time, it's not fierce, it's not going to scare you. So that's the big change on this motorcycle. And overall, when you ride it, when you ride it hard and fast, especially on the twisties, it feels no bigger than a KTM 390 Duke. So that's what this motorcycle does. I think, it kind of shrinks around you, and the handling is really amazing. Similarly, the brakes are brilliant. The handlebar is wider now compared to the previous Streetfighter V2, so you get more leverage. But I think for my frame, I felt a little cramped at some point in time because the foot pegs are still kind of sporty. So when you're riding at slow speeds, that's when you notice it. So in city riding, you might feel that, when you're riding in the city, it might put extra load on your arms. But when you're going fast, well, you don't notice it because you're so busy having fun. Another great thing about this motorcycle is the noise. So this is still BS6 or Euro 5 compliant, but somehow Ducati has managed to make it really loud. And if you're riding it hard and fast, on the overrun, it sounds amazing. It has those pops, and it is really an involving experience overall. So on the whole, I have to say that on paper, it definitely looks like a downgrade, but when you ride it, it's not really the case, because yes, it has lost over 30 horsepower, and yes, it has a smaller engine, but regardless of that, when you ride it fast, well, there is no difference as such. The only thing is it's more accessible and it's more easier to ride, especially when you're going fast. And for new riders, that's the key point with this motorcycle. For new riders, they'll quickly get to grips with this motorcycle and they can quickly go fast. So overall, these are my first impressions of the Streetfighter V2. Of course, can't wait to ride it back in India, because that's where you really get to see how it performs in daily riding conditions. But overall, on these roads, I think this motorcycle was absolutely flawless. And I have to say, compared to the V4, I think there is a big difference between these two motorcycles now. The V4 feels more sophisticated, but this one is easier and this one is more chuckable in that sense. So if you want something light and fun, I think this is the motorcycle to go for. But if you want something more powerful with all the sophisticated electronics, I think the V4 is still the bike to go for. But again, when it comes to India, there is going to be a huge difference in terms of the pricing of both the motorcycles. So I'll reserve my final judgment for that. And if you think this is a downgrade compared to the old version, well, that's so not the case.